The highly anticipated sentencing of Donald Trump is just around the corner, scheduled for January 10th, 2025. Now, I want us to talk about the possibility of this happening. As one of the ladies in the video aptly puts it, we shouldn't get too excited just yet because we all know how this might play out. Now, Judge Merchan is expected to sentence Trump to an unconditional discharge in the hush money case, citing the presidential immunity doctrine. Now, this means that Trump might get off scot-free, despite facing up to 4 years in prison. Now, many speculate that sentence will be much lighter, but Trump's legal team is still trying to intervene and stop the sentencing altogether. Now, as we count down to January 10th, people are sharing their thoughts on this unprecedented event. In this video, we'll explore the different perspectives on Trump's sentencing and what it might mean for the country. So let's take a look into the videos and examine the possibilities. Will Trump receive a slap on the wrist, or will justice be served? Let's take a look at these videos. I will be right back.
Don't be so excited about Trump's sentencing next Friday, January 10th. Judge in Trump's hush money case expected to sentence him to unconditional discharge. So the judge is going to sentence him to an unconditional discharge out of respect for the presidential immunity doctrine. Trump faces the possibility of 4 years in prison, but everyone is speculating that it will definitely be a lot lighter. But of course, Trump's legal team is trying to intervene and stop the sentencing. Trump's spokesperson, Stephen Chung, sent out a statement. President Trump must be allowed to continue the presidential transition process and to execute the vital duties of the presidency, unobstructed by the remains of this or any remnants of the witch hunts. There should be no sentencing. As we know, Trump was found guilty back in May. 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to hush money payment made to an adult film actress Stormy Daniels in order to boost his electoral prospects in the 2016 presidential election. Anyways, even with this sentencing, he's not going to go to prison, but there still is a possibility that after 4 years after he finishes his term, he will go from the White House to the Big House.
Y'all, this is wild and a huge twist. A judge just set Donald Trump's sentencing in his hush money case for January 10th, 2025, just over a week before he returns to the White House. Now, of course, with good news comes something that's not as good. So, Judge Merchan said that Trump's not going to get any jail time. No. Why? Because he's above the law. But Merchan is giving him a conditional discharge, meaning if he stays out of trouble, which we all know he won't, the case could be dismissed. So to rewind for a minute, Trump was convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records tied to a hush money payment to Stormy Daniels back in 2016. Trump says he did nothing wrong. However, we have the proof and the evidence that shows he does, and therefore he was convicted and is about to be sentenced. So it stands that he will still be the one and only president, former or current, that has been convicted of federal felony counts. 34 of them. After his November 5th election win, his lawyers argued the case could be tossed out to avoid disruption to his presidency. Of no jail time, but the conviction will stand unless Trump messes up. So again, this is think of it like a probationary release, a conditional release, to where they will be out on good behavior. However, if that behavior changes, he could be revoked, drawn into a hearing to demand cause that will then determine if they revisit this to then make it a jail sentence, which again, as president, he can be president and be in jail. It's never happened. It's never come close to it, but it's possible. I mean, we're living really in unprecedented times. So what do you think? Because my thoughts are we shouldn't have a two-tier justice system like we do that serves the ultra wealthy and the powerful, and the rest of us just get scraps and we get held accountable to the full extent of the law. That should be the case for everybody. Do you think the incoming president should be sentenced just days before taking office? Do you think he shouldn't? I want to know whether you support him or don't. Drop in the comments below and let me know what you think about.
Well, It appears as though Donald Trump is going to get sentenced before he takes office. Yes, that is correct. Judge Juan Marchand has ordered that Donald Trump will be sentenced on January 10th for his 34 felony counts in New York regarding his payments to Stormy Daniels and that cover-up. At this point in time, the judge is signaling basically to everybody, because Donald Trump takes office 10 days after the sentencing, that there won't be any sort of jail time for him regarding these felony counts. I'm unsure of what reality in America somebody could be found guilty of 34 felony counts and not serve any jail time, but apparently that's where we're at if you're rich and white named Donald Trump. But color me surprised, because I didn't think he'd be sentenced before he was inaugurated.
We have some breaking news. Things are not looking good for Donald Trump, because Judge Juan Marchand of New York has just upheld Trump's felony conviction of 34 counts of business fraud in the hush money trial. Trump's legal team had initially been trying to delay sentencing until after the election as a way to put pressure on the judge to possibly be more lenient, considering he's now going to be president of the United States, and it didn't work. The sentencing date has been set to January 10th, and Judge Marchand has ordered Trump to either appear in person or virtually. And for those of you wondering, no, this doesn't mean jail time for the president-elect. Looks like it's rules for thee, but not for me. Marchand also indicated that he favored a so-called unconditional discharge, which is a rare alternative to jail or probation, but that would still cement Trump's legacy status as a convicted felon, which would make him the first ever president to be one. Of course, Trump and his legal team are expected to ask an appeals court to intervene and further postpone the sentencing within days, so I'll keep you guys posted.
Breaking news just in: President Donald Trump will not be sentenced to any jail time as a result of the 34 felony counts he was convicted of not long ago. Very interesting news. However, the judge did uphold the convictions. Really curious where you sit on this issue. Number one, do you feel that President Trump was guilty or innocent? Number two, regardless of who you voted for, was this the right decision for the judge to not impose jail time? And this is probably going to be a hotly debated topic. But honestly, from my view, I would say that regardless of where you sit on things politically, what good would it really do to hand down a prison sentence, say 2 years, 5 years, whatever it may be? Obviously, as president-elect, Donald Trump will not be going to jail, and neither will he as president, and most likely post-presidency, he will not be either. Assuming 2 terms, who knows what will happen with that topic, which is the subject of another video. But regardless of all of that, will this conviction, or I should say these convictions, stand? Will all of this be expunged somehow? Who knows? On the flip side of the coin, if there was prison time handed down, would that further inflame political tensions in America and further polarize Americans, and even incite some type of violence and aggression and just make things even more tense than they are already? What good would it serve? So in some ways, I would say, does this appease both sides of the equation politically? Obviously, everyone's outside their comfort zone. President Trump would prefer to have the convictions overturned. Obviously, that didn't happen. So there's a loss there. President Trump didn't want to be given jail time, even though he wouldn't serve it, honestly. And he wasn't. So kind of maybe a pill that's swallowable, if that's a word. I can coin that phrase now. New word for you. Secondly, for those that feel that he should do jail time, well, he's not, but the conviction stood. So is this a compromise that helps to appease both sides and helps America heal and recover from polarization? After all, we're all Americans at the end of the day. Curious what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please do share.
I really don't know what to make of this, guys. As soon as I saw that the judge wanted Trump to get sentenced on the 10th, I was like, that's a very particular date. Why is that a very particular date? Well, we had a new moon at 9 Cancer on December 30th, and we'll have a full moon on January 13th at 20. My phone wants go juice. We'll have a full moon on the 13th at 23:59 Cancer, and January 11th. January 11th. What day is that? Oh, that's right. The North Node true calculation returns to the Aries point on January 11th. This is set for Phoenix, 4:01 p.m. If you're into draconic astrology, this would be the draconic chart matches the chart of the tropical western once every 18 and a half years. It is a resetting of timelines. Well, look, when was the last time that the North Node was at 00 Aries? June 22nd, 2006. Yeah. June 2006, he starts meeting these Playboy models. And June 2006, humps up with one, and July 2006, the other one. 18 and a half later, it just so happens that the Friday before, because, they don't have court on Saturdays, it's the day before the North Node returns to the Aries point, the world stage, the initiation of energy on Earth. He's going to get sentenced. Just some other insane stuff about this moment. I set the chart for, this is the Cancer full moon chart, actually. And on the full moon, wherever you are, the lot of fortune is always the descendant. And there's an exact conjunction of Machiavelli asteroid and Pluto on the descendant for New York City on the 13th. Can't make it up, folks. And then we could look at noon on Friday. Uranus is in the 23rd degree of Taurus, and it's stationary. It is it doesn't station direct until January 30th, but it doesn't move more than half a degree between now and then. It's just chilling out. Asteroid Grieve will be conjunct Donald Trump's natal Neptune, and Moon, Mercury, and Mars will all be out of bounds on Friday, the 10th. Asteroid Machiavelli is also out of bounds, and it's out of bounds on Trump's natal chart, as well as his Pluto is out of bounds, which I don't know that I've ever seen a Pluto out of bounds before. I'm sure I have, but it's unusual. The outer planets don't really go out of bounds very often. And of course, his Mercury out of bounds and parallel his out of bounds Pluto, and that's part of what gives somebody a really nasty, nasty mind for manipulation. And I don't care what side you're on, you can't deny that. The man spent the 80s cheating other people out of their money, going bankrupt, and really, truly ruining the lives of many Americans. Just because you're into The Apprentice or whatever and you think he's a great person doesn't take away everything that he did his whole life. Friday, the 10th, at noon in New York City, asteroid Machiavelli, 1 Aquarius conjunct Pluto, 1 Aquarius, they're less than half a degree apart. And this is really interesting because the sun is at 20 Capricorn. In the beginning of the year, I was talking about that for months and months and months. It was at January 10th, we had this new moon at 20 degrees Capricorn that exactly squared the nodes of fate. And that degree, 20 Capricorn, we read the Sabian symbol as the next whole degree, 21 Capricorn, a relay race. So we had a new moon square the nodes of fate at 20 Capricorn, square 20 Aries, and 20 Libra. And the Sabian symbols for all of these, 21 Capricorn, a relay race. The south node was on the degree in Libra, which is like crowds gathered on a beach. And the north node was on a pugilist enters the ring, a boxer enters the ring. That was where we were headed with this turning point in fate that we started 2024 with, the new moon at 20 degrees Capricorn. And now he has to show up to court on the day that's that same degree, January 10th again, and get sentenced. But June 2006, July 2006 starts with Playboy models, and that is the last time the North Node was on the Aries point, the world stage. You can't make this stuff up, folks.
The judge overseeing Donald Trump's hush money case in New York dealt with a host of weighty and unprecedented questions before deciding Friday that the president-elect should be sentenced later this month for the crime of falsifying business records. In an 18-page legal opinion, Merchan laid out his reasoning for the ruling. His most important finding was that Trump's conviction should not be thrown out simply because he was elected president. Indeed, the sanctity of a jury verdict and the difference that must be accorded to it is a bedrock principle in our nation's jurisprudence, Merchan wrote. But the judge also signaled that he intended to impose a sentence of unconditional discharge, which means that Trump would not face any punishment beyond having the conviction on his legal record. Now, Trump's spokesperson said after Merchan's ruling that the president-elect would continue to fight against the case, which he called a hoax. Now, here are some key excerpts from the judge's decision. A president-elect is not immune from prosecution. The Constitution dictates that only a president, after taking the oath of office, has the authority of the chief executive. A president-elect does not. Accordingly, a president-elect is not permitted to avail himself of the protections afforded to the individual occupying that office. Binding precedent does not provide that an individual upon becoming president can retroactively dismiss or vacate prior criminal acts, nor does it grant blanket presidential-elect immunity. Now, in an extraordinary 10, a judge Friday set President-elect Donald Trump's sentencing in his hush money criminal case for January 10th. Little over a week before he's due to return to the White House, but indicated he wouldn't be jailed. Now, the development nevertheless leaves Trump on course to be the first president to take office convicted of felony crimes. Manhattan Judge Merchan, who presided over Trump's trial, signaled in a written decision that he would sentence the former and future president to what's known as an unconditional discharge, in which a conviction stands but the case is closed without jail time, a fine, or probation. Now, Trump can appear virtually for sentencing if he chooses, rejecting Trump's push to dismiss the verdict and throw out the case on presidential immunity grounds and because of his impending second term. Merchan wrote that only bringing finality to this matter would serve the interests of justice. Now, he said he sought to balance Trump's ability to govern, unencumbered by the case, against other interests, the U.S. Supreme Court's July ruling on presidential immunity and the public's expectation that all are equal and no one is above the law, and the importance of respecting a jury verdict. Now, this court is simply not persuaded that the first factor outweighs the others at this stage of the proceeding, Merchan wrote in an 18-page decision. Trump lashed out at Merchan on his Truth Social platform Friday, writing that it would be the end of the presidency as we know it if the judge's ruling is allowed to stand. He repeated his claims that the case was an illegitimate political attack and nothing but a rigged charade perpetrated by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, a Democrat. He didn't elaborate on potential next legal moves. Now, Bragg's office declined to comment on Merchan's ruling. Former Manhattan Judge Diane Kiso said the ruling can't be appealed under New York law, but Trump nonetheless might try to appeal it. In any event, he can appeal his conviction, a step that can't be taken until he is sentenced, but he won't be able to pardon himself. Trump's case was tried in state court, but presidential pardons only apply to federal crimes. Now, Trump takes office January 20th as the first former president to be convicted of a crime and the first convicted criminal to be elected to the office. The Republican was found guilty in May of 34 counts of falsifying business records. Now, the charges involved an alleged scheme to hide a hush money payment to P actor Stormy Daniels in the last weeks of Trump's first campaign in 2016. The payout was meant to keep her from publicizing claims she'd had S with the married Trump years earlier. He says that her story is false and that he did nothing wrong. Now, the case centered on how Trump accounted for reimbursing his personal attorney at the time, Michael Cohen, for the Daniels payment. Cohen on Friday called Merchan's decision to go ahead with the sentencing judicious and appropriate. Now, the conviction left Trump 78 facing the possibility of punishment ranging from a fine or probation to up to 4 years in prison. His sentencing initially was set for last July 11th, then postponed twice at the defense's request. Then after Trump's November 5th election, Merchan delayed the sentencing again so the defense and prosecution could weigh in on the future of the case. Now, Trump's lawyers urged Merchan to toss it. They said it would otherwise pose unconstitutional disruptions to the incoming president's ability to run the country. Prosecutors acknowledged there should be some accommodation for his upcoming presidency, but they insisted the conviction should stand. Now, they suggested various options such as freezing the case during this term or guaranteeing him a no-jail sentence. They also proposed closing the case while formally noting both his conviction and his undecided appeal, a novel idea drawn from what some state courts do when criminal defendants get unalived while appealing their cases. Now, Merchan ruled that Trump's current status as president-elect does not afford him the same immunity as a sitting president. Setting the verdict aside and dismissing the case would be a drastic step and would undermine the rule of law in immeasurable ways, Merchan wrote. Before Trump's November election, his lawyers sought to reverse his conviction for a different reason: the Supreme Court's immunity decision, which gave presidents broad protection from criminal prosecution. Now, Trump was a private citizen campaigning for president, but neither elected nor sworn in when Cohen paid Daniels in October 2016. He was president when Cohen was reimbursed, and Cohen testified that they discussed the repayment arrangement in the Oval Office. Now, the Trump hush money attorneys contended that the jury got some evidence that should have been shielded by presidential immunity. Merchan later rejected that argument. But in the meantime, the election raised new issues. It is a lot, guys, but people are just waiting for next week Friday, the 10th of January. But as we wait for next week Friday, what are your thoughts on this? Share your thoughts, your contributions, your views in the comment section down below. Thank you for always watching, and see you in our next video as we bring you another interesting video.